See a cut in the Fed rate because that should have happened a long time ago. I think they're being very tardy in not doing it and not having done it sooner. They raised too quickly, and I've been quite vocal on that. They also did quantitative tightening, which was ridiculous. And so, and despite that, if you look, I guess you could call it normalized, but if you look, our economy is doing fantastically. And if you take a look at the previous administration, they weren't paying interest. They had no interest rates. They had loosening, not tightening. And frankly, it's a big difference. And our economy is incredible. Our jobs, you look at the jobs market, but you have to be proactive. And so we really need a Fed cut rate, because if you look at what's going on with the European Union, as an example, they're cutting. You take a look at Germany, what they're doing and what they're paying. I mean, they're actually doing something inverse. Nobody's ever seen it before. We have to at least keep up to an extent. So right now, we're paying a very much higher rate of interest, and we didn't follow the world. And generally speaking, that's okay, but you can't have that much of a disparity. So we're looking for a rate cut. We could be really greatly helped if the Fed would do its job and do a substantial rate cut. Also, they were doing quantitative tightening, very bad to do. They should do easing, actual easing, no tightening, or at a minimum, they should be doing nothing about that. But they have to do a rate cut. The other thing is, we're looking at various tax reductions, but I'm looking at that all the time anyway, tax reductions. That's one of the reasons we're in such a strong economic position. We're right now the #1 country anywhere in the world by far as an economy. Europe's got a lot of problems, and Asia's got a lot of problems. You look at China. China's had the worst year they've had in 27 years, and they want to make a deal with us. But I can tell you, I'm not ready to make a deal unless they're going to make the right kind of a deal. I'm not ready to make a deal, so I don't know. But I will say this: something will happen, maybe soon, and maybe a little bit later. But China very much wants to make a deal.
What kind of tax cuts would you look at? We've heard again potential cut in the payroll tax. Indexing capital gains. What would you accept?
Well, we've been talking about indexing for a long time, and many people like indexing, and it can be done very simply. It can be done directly by me. And so we've been looking at that. As you probably have heard, I can do it directly. So we're talking about indexing, and we're always looking at the capital gains tax, payroll tax. We're looking at, I would love to do something on capital gains. We're talking about that. That's a big deal, goes through Congress. Payroll tax is something that we think about, and a lot of people would like to see that, and that very much affects the workers of our country, and we have a lot of workers. Right now, by the way, we have more people working today than we've ever had before in the history of our country. We have almost 160 million people working today. I think the word recession is a word that's inappropriate, because it's just a word that the certain people, I'm going to be kind, certain people in the media are trying to build up, because they'd love to see a recession. We're very far from a recession. In fact, if the Fed would do its job, I think would have a tremendous spurt of growth, a tremendous spurt. The Fed is psychologically very important, less so actually, but very psychologically important. And if the Fed would do its job, which it's really done very poorly over the last year and a half, you would see a burst of growth like you've never seen before. And that would be lowering interest rates and maybe putting some, if you look at what China is doing, if you look at what Germany is doing, if you look at what so many countries are doing, putting some money in, because we want to compete with these other countries. So I think that we actually are set for a tremendous surge of growth if the Fed would do its job. That's a big if, frankly. But the Fed should be cutting, and I would say they should say at a minimum 100 basis points over a period of time, not at one time, but over a period of time.
Does the U.S. economy really need a stimulus?
Mr. President, can a country afford tax cuts when we're already running?
Well, I'm not talking about doing anything at this moment, but indexing is something that a lot of people have liked for a long time, and it's something that would be very easy to do. And a lot of people have been talking about indexing for many years, and it's something that I am certainly thinking about. I can say that a majority of the people in the White House at the level that does this kind of thing. They like indexing. So it is something I'm thinking about. Payroll taxes, I've been thinking about payroll taxes for a long time. Whether or not we do it now or not is, it's not being done because of recession, because we are legitimately, if we had a cut in interest rates by the Fed, if they would do their job properly, and if they would do a meaningful cut because they raised too fast, you would see growth like you've not seen ever in this country. Now, if you go from the election, that great November 8th date, if you go from November 9th to present, you're talking about almost a 60% increase in the stock market. You're talking about unemployment numbers that are the lowest in history in many categories, and overall almost the lowest ever in the history of our country. I think it was 1969, and we are set to surpass that number. I mean, our country is doing very well. When I spoke to the president, we were just walking in, and he said, "Congratulations on the great success of your economy and your country," and I appreciated that, but our country is doing very well.
Mr. President, would you agree strengthening